Now, the thing that's really paramount when we're thinking about the measurement of sound really is the medium that it's actually working in. And, I hate to break it to George Lucas fans, but unfortunately, the Millennium Falcon, made no sound at all. And, those Rebel ion blasters equally made no sound because space is in a vacuum and we have no medium.
It's like when you clap your hands in a space such as this one. It's really almost synonymous when you drop a pedal in a pond and the waves radiate outwards. They hit the edge and they bounce back in. And they'll keep doing this until the energy dissipates.
Yes. And if we thought about the speed of those waves would be travelling at approximately 340 metres per second. Now, you might notice that I said approximately because this is very dependent, again, getting back to this concept of medium. And so the medium it's running in actually determines its speed. So if we think about this 340 metres per second figure, really we're talking about air, and we're actually talking about air at sea level at 20 degrees Celsius, which, starts to get fairly technical. If we think about other mediums, such as water, for example, it's more dense. Sound can actually travel, further and faster than it does in air. And, if we thought about an even denser medium, like, say, steel, for example, then, it can travel really long distances. And so, if anyone's ever put their ear to a rail, like on a rail line, for example, then you can hear trains from incredible distances because of that capacity for sound to move through that very dense medium.
Yeah, that's right. And when those molecules within that medium, say it be air, water or a rail line, move together, they compress. And that's what we call a compression in a waveform. And as they pull back, creating a kind of low pressure zone, if you like, that's what we call a rarefaction. And that forms the fundamentals of any waveform of sound.
Yeah, you'd think about that as one cycle, like we were thinking about, the cycle of a sound wave, you'd get one compression and one rarefaction. And if we think about different ways of actually, measuring that particular sound, if we think of the pitch of a sound or what we'd hear as a pitch sound, then we measure that in physical terms, as frequency or, cycles per second. So each of those cycles, one compression, one rarefaction, we get a number of those happening every second, and that gives us what we'd perceive as pitch. And that's one way that we can measure sound.
So if we consider, for example, how much the waveform moves in a compression or how much it moves or is displaced in a rarefaction, that produces the amplitude of the wave. And that's actually a correlation directly to how loud we perceive that sound. And that ties in together as another attribute with regards to sound in terms of its frequency.
Yes, and if we think about the human limits of this, and certainly in our next video we're going to focus much more on perception and how we perceive sound. But we have a couple of different limits when it comes to human perception. So in frequency terms, we can hear sounds from between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz or 20 kilohertz, i.e. at 20 cycles per second to 20,000 cycles per second. And similarly, we have two thresholds when it comes to amplitude or loudness as well. So we've got 0 decibels, which would be referred to as the threshold of audibility, and we've got 120 decibels range, which at the top end it's called the threshold of pain, which is fairly self-explanatory. If you hear a sound at 120 decibels, your ears hurt.
Absolutely.